I get asked a lot, why did you start drinking? Did something terrible happen to you when you were 15? Because terrible things do happen to 15-year-old girls, I get that. And the scary thing is that no, nothing happened. Nothing. I had a really nice family. I had amazing parents, I still do. I had great friends. I was never particularly confident. I was never particularly attractive. I was, always one of the really awkward teenagers. I just loved it. I knew something was wrong because sometimes, like one of those kaleidoscopes where you're looking through it and everything clicks into place. Sometimes, really occasionally, the kaleidoscope would click into place. Every time the kaleidoscope clicked into place and all the colours made sense, I'd go off again and there would be an excuse for a drink, because there's always someone that drinks more than you. And there's always someone a little bit more messed up than you. So it was always okay. I've never had enough to drink. Never in my life have I had enough to drink. And thank God, really, because then I would be dead.
There come a lonely night, I can't escape my mind. From a broken bough, fall into finite space, with a roof torn down, this house is an empty place. For so look of concern, it might make you sad. Like the fluttering bird in a dream you had. Here come the lonely night, can't escape my mind.
This is me. This is actually the only photo of me holding a can of beer. My name is Arthur Corty, and I am one of the few people in Britain who don't drink. That's how it feels anyway. That's not to say I've never tried it. I have. I just never liked it. Even as a teenager, when all my friends were out drinking, I always preferred to be out shooting silly films, making music, or sitting in my bedroom trying to save humanity from the latest threat of Armageddon. I even tried my hand at pro wrestling. I always had something more interesting to do. Alcohol just didn't stand a chance. But I saw the effects of it all around me. At home, on the streets,
You haven't had enough time! And Willie's been loving it!
on TV, in the news.
Britain's got a major drinking problem.
1 in 5 of all deaths are caused by alcohol.
Britain's binge drinking culture.
Binge drinking.
Binge drinking.
40 Jaegers!
Wherever I looked, people were getting pissed. So why do we do it?
The British drink more than every other culture because they can handle it. And because we know how to have fun.
Yeah, it doesn't look that fun, but maybe it's just me.
Alcohol is a potential menace to community safety as well as to his personal health.
No, absolutely, we should ban it entirely. It's the only obvious thing to do is get rid of this scourge completely.
Well, that sounds like a terrible idea.
Violence, wanton destruction, and utter lawlessness.
I think we can all agree we've built up a pretty bad reputation for ourselves when it comes to drinking. But this obsession with alcohol is nothing new. It's something that's been around for hundreds of years.
For most of human history, and certainly until the late 19th century, water was basically unsafe to drink. In the 16th, 17th century, tea, coffee, soft drinks are all unavailable. So you find that old, young, even children are drinking beer. They would drink a variety of beer called small beer, perhaps a little bit stronger than modern day shandy. Working men felt that it gave them health and strength.
Beer gives you muscle.
Men in hard physical jobs particularly would be drinking vast amounts. They would be drinking up to 3 gallons of beer a day. And in the early 18th century, gin drinking reached what people have seen as an epidemic or a craze. Of course, it's epitomised most famously by Hogarth's depiction of Gin Lane. Basically, you could produce it and sell it more or less anywhere. So not only public houses sold gin, but grocers' shops, general stores also sold gin, so you'd go in and buy some basic items and also have a shot of gin on the side. They also used to sell the stuff on the streets. People would go around selling gin to the spectators at public executions. And then the First World War had a big impact. Because the government, and particularly the Ministry of Munitions and later Prime Minister Lloyd George, identified drink as a real threat to the war effort. Famously, he said, "We are fighting Germany, Austria and drink, but the greatest enemy is drink." In the Second World War, the government saw drink and pubs as essential to maintaining morale. It was thought important to try and keep up a reasonable supply of beer to the troops. There used to be a phrase, beer and Britannia. The French were identified with wine, so the English were identified with beer.
Well, yes, rather.
In more modern times then, from the 1950s and 60s, alcohol consumption has continued to rise. From the 1980s it became a particular concern, in 80s associated with football hooliganism or the lager lout phenomenon.
All we're going for is a good game of football, a good punch up and a good piss up.
And then in the later 20th century, the binge drinking phenomenon. And one of the government's aims in the 2003 Licensing Act was to try and persuade us to adopt a more, what they like to think of as continental style of drinking, where we drink sensibly as they do allegedly in French cafes, having cultural conversations, rather than binge drinking and falling out of pub doorways as allegedly we're behaving here.
I don't drink a lot of alcohol. I drink sometimes once a week, and only if I am in a restaurant. I never drink alone in my home, or if I'm alone with my kids and my family, I never drink.
La dernière fois que j'ai bu, c'était samedi dernier. Ouais, non, très bien. 2-3 verres, donc on est rentré en taxi, ça s'est super bien passé, et voilà, c'était une bonne soirée.
We don't drink to be drunk. We drink in order to appreciate the wine or the alcohol.
My opinion about the British people, the first thing I would think about them is binge drinking.
I think they don't know what to do, and they have no interest in their life, and maybe they think that the only way to have fun is to drink.
Quite famously, people know that in France and Italy, for example, quite young children are allowed or encouraged to drink a bit of wine with dinner with their parents. In the UK, young people anyway tend to have fewer meals with adults than they do in other countries, and to spend more time with their friends. We tend to eat earlier in the UK, and that means that parents are often not home from work. On the continent, they often eat dinner later. It sounds like a small thing, but it completely changes the dynamic of the family environment.
In this country, there has not been a culture of respecting alcohol, respecting the manufacture of alcohol or the produce of wine and things like that. We have never had that culture.
We're well known as a nation of boozers, really, in Britain. There isn't really any stigma about being seen drunk in public. I think that's quite surprising from people in different countries. In the US, I don't think you see that kind of binge drinking, public drunkenness culture in quite the same way.
There is obviously the kind of spring break culture of kind of going out and getting absolutely ripped for 3 or 4 weeks. But outside of spring break, I think they're a little bit more, quite a lot more disapproving of drunken behaviour. I don't think Americans tolerate drunkenness anything like the extent that we do.
So the French seem to think we're a bunch of pissheads. But what do the Americans think? So when you think about Britain and British culture, what comes to mind?
Bangers and mash, fish and chips, pubs.
Soccer, drinking games.
Tea and crumpets, and bad teeth, sorry. Guinness.
So much more of being young is drinking. It's like that's how they have fun.
The age limit, it's 21 here, it's 18 over there, so that has a lot to do with it.
When I was living in London, I drank every day, 7 days a week, and it was definitely way more than I ever drank in America.
It's like when you're there at 5 o'clock every day, every business person goes to the pub. I think it's like kind of ingrained in their culture that you go to work, you go to the pub, and then you go home.
The pub, which is practically an institution in Britain, is something like the stateside corner bar, only more so. It's more like a friendly club, a neighborhood gathering place, where men can meet to share the quiet pleasures of a glass of beer and conversation, where nothing is hurried, a little world all its own.
It's changed completely. I mean, it's happened slowly and fairly insidiously, and I think when things happen slowly, you don't really notice until you suddenly turn around one day and think, oh my God, things have really changed.
If you look at a typical city centre or town centre in the UK, it tends to be populated by lots of pubs and clubs, which has been brilliant because it spawned a great music culture here. But what it doesn't have is lots of outside space for socialising. And on the continent, you tend to see big open town squares where adults and young people socialise in close proximity. And there seems to be an association between that kind of socialising and a healthier attitude to alcohol, for obvious reasons, because you see parents and adults consuming alcohol over dinner in a more responsible, normal way. So there's kind of these countervailing, very deep-rooted forces at work which prevent young people from having the exposure to responsible adult drinking that you see they have on the continent.
We probably haven't, with our parents, spoken about drinking a lot, other than maybe we've come home after a party and been vomiting everywhere there, and they just said, you really shouldn't drink so much, but actually we're not dealing with the why. Why did you get absolutely off your face?
When I was sort of 19, 20, 21 and it was all kicking off and going a bit mad, I didn't really understand that I could do anything different because everyone that I saw around me was in the madness as well. I think we could do with educating our teens in Britain before they sort of head on into the madness.
As the sun goes down, society fades away, and what emerges from the shadows is a monster of low inhibitions, aggression, and casual chaos. It's almost like every night we go to war with ourselves. On one side, you've got the police, the emergency services, the council, and various groups of volunteers. And on the other side, you've got, well, everybody else.
Are you fucking videoing this? Fuck your mum, bruv!
We fight and we fight. It's just that nobody ever wins.
You go out to get off your face. You go out and you drink a load. And that's what most people understand by binge drinking. Some countries will define that as having 6 units of alcohol. Now that's only 2/3 of a bottle of wine. That doesn't feel like a binge to most British people. You know, it might to people in other countries, but to a lot of British people, that doesn't feel like a binge.
Drank a lot in the early days when I first started, 10, 12 pints a day, every day.
I could go out and drink 20 pints of lager and, walk home okay.
I mean, I see people who are drinking a bottle and a half of vodka a day. That's a lot. If you drank that right now, you might die. But to them, they're just maintaining an equilibrium.
We have this kind of phrase, binge drinking, making out that actually in between these mad sessions of alcohol, people aren't using anything at all, but that's not what's happening. People are drinking all the time.
I binge drink like hell. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I drink every day. I'm gonna die soon, but it's not too bad. I live my life. If we had no alcohol, no cigarettes, If we had none of that, this place would be so boring. So boring. It's like fast food. If we never had fast food, what would we eat? We'd eat nothing. It would be horrible.
If anybody makes a statement that, you know, in Europe it's better, I always say, well, where's the evidence? I think in Europe, as opposed to Britain, Europe is different.
Well, there is evidence because liver disease is going up here and in most of Europe it's going down, so surely that suggests that it is worse here.
That's possible.
In the past 10 years, the number of people who are under 30 who are going to hospital for liver problems caused by alcohol has gone up by 117%. And in particular regions of the country, it's even higher. So in the northeast of England, it's gone up by 400%. I mean, these are catastrophic levels of liver damage taking place. I mean, it's really unusual in the rest of Europe to see people in their 20s or 30s with liver disease, but it's something that's happening to a whole generation of people in Britain.
I bet you've left you left a bit of Chinese on the floor.
You will always see people joking about a drunk and thinking that's great, and I laugh at that as well, and I think it's very funny, but actually it's rather sad.
Right, dude, I called you an ambulance, alright? Called you an ambulance.
I'm not sure there are many responsible drinkers in this world. I'm certainly can't claim to be a responsible drinker.
The medics told us to stop filming while they helped this guy covered in sick. Then they turned around and started laughing at us. They accused us of wasting their time because this guy was only pissed, and the fact that we were actually concerned for his health was apparently really funny. It just goes to show how normalised scenes like this are on our streets and how we've all essentially become numb to it.
Their ethos is, we could be attending an incident that could be far more serious, and we've got to be here with you, and you have put yourself in that condition. And I totally agree with them.
Go to A&E any night and it's full of people who've broken things, or, you know, of blood everywhere, or completely disoriented, or, you know, somebody's attacked them, or they've attacked somebody and the person's hit back, you know, and they don't really know how they've got there because they're drunk.
As a GP, a huge proportion of my time is taking up with dealing with people with alcohol problems, and it's not just dealing with the patients, it's dealing with their families, it's dealing with the social, the psychological wreck that results from having one member of the family who has alcohol problems. But I've seen patients where I've gone in to talk to them and have made it perfectly clear to them that they are going to kill themselves if they don't stop drinking, and their response is, if those are my choices, I'm ready to die.
Violence is a significant challenge for us. 50% of that violence we know to be fueled by alcohol. It impacts families, it impacts children, it puts a load on our hospitals, and of course it puts a huge load on policing. And where would people want their police? Not policing bars and clubs at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, but actually available during the day to reassure people and be solving crimes and doing the sort of things that police do. So if 50% of violent crime, with all the damage that it does, is alcohol related, again, there is no case. We must do something about this.
So in terms of economic cost, what are we actually looking at here?
Alcohol costs the country £21 billion every year.
And that's the best estimate we have. That's the one that has the kind of clearest evidence base behind it, but it's not perfect, and other people have estimated that it's higher.
And that's broken down into the cost of crime itself, lack of productivity, and NHS costs.
In 2011, we had about 1.2 million hospital admissions related directly to alcohol in the UK, and that's an increase in the last 10 years of about 135%.
I mean, the situation that we're in at the moment is absolutely horrendous. If we don't literally address it right now, I wouldn't like to think of where we're actually going to be.
Whenever a person in the public eye comes out and tells the world that they're in recovery, it inspires thousands of people to try to do the same thing. And I am therefore delighted to nervously introduce Russell Brand to you.
Hello everyone, I'm Russell, I'm an addict. I did that to weed out other addicts. Who here is prepared to admit to having a drug or alcohol? Oh, fucking hell, I'm going to rinse this, it'll be a doddle. But I'm not here like as a famous person or a celebrity or anything, I'm here as a drug addict. Now, as a famous drug addict, I can like raise attention. I'm a professional attention seeker, I do it to a professional standard. I've been highly paid for attention seeking, but I'm here today as what, Chip never fails to remind me that I am a bog standard drug addict. Nothing special, unusual, different, unique about my drug addiction. Very, very ordinary drug addict. In fact, when I first met Chip, 11 and a half years ago, probably now, I'm just over 11 years clean, he said, I remember these words, it was very condemnatory and casually callous. I remember being sort of vaguely offended. Oh, you're a complete garbage head, he said. He said, if you don't stop taking drugs now, you'll be dead in prison or in a lunatic asylum within 6 months. I thought, fuck me, that's a heavy verdict from this guy. But I still didn't think, oh, I better stop then. I just thought, oh no, just sort of felt a bit desperate. I was hoping to go on holiday.
I drank initially because I used to feel nervous. I didn't like the taste of booze when I first had it. And then I realised, oh my God, it makes me super confident. It felt like it gave me sort of another identity. And I've never been any good at moderating or controlling things. So I'd drink real cheap booze, go off licence, get £7 bottle of white rum or some dodgy tequila. And I'd sup it throughout the day. And once in a while, if I had a particularly challenging obstacle ahead of me, I'd drink a whole bottle of it, and sort of in a kind of stupor. Both my mates here, Sharon and Martino, both knew me sort of at that time. I remember a journey from Martino's house in Rome to Sharon, who was meeting me, I think, Stansted Airport that day. I nicked a bottle of vodka, a litre of vodka from duty free in Rome, drank it, and it's only a 2-hour flight, so by the time I arrived in London, I was like a sort of a giddy, delirious idiot. Sharon reminds me that sort of the security at the airport said, can you keep your monkey under control? I was in a right state, you can really mess yourself up with that legal drug alcohol. Here's a serious problem. If you're drinking it excessively, it's going to create problems for yourself in the short term, in the long term, in the medium term. It's a problematic substance. Unless you've got no proclivity towards addiction at all, it's something that you need to be aware of. That's my experience.
The only community that I've ever really felt actually part of, not outside of, is the community of drug addicts and alcoholics. When I was at school, I didn't feel like I fitted in, anywhere. I'm an only child of a single mother, and I didn't feel like I fitted in my family. There's only one other fucking person. It's hard to develop an identity as an outsider under those conditions. I weren't a recreational drug user, not from the get-go. For me, it was medicinal from the first ever time I took drugs. I was unhappy, I was miserable, I felt lost, I felt alone, and if anyone could offer me anything that would deal with that feeling, I'll have it. But when I was a little kid, chocolate biscuits. When I was an adolescent, pornography. When someone come along with drugs, I'll take it, I'll do it. And I believe that for we drug addicts, alcoholics, it's like we've got a spiritual craving, a yearning, and we don't have the language, we don't have the code to express that in our society. But the feeling won't go away, so you've got to nullify it, anaesthetise it somehow. I can't live with it. I can't be alive. I can't be alive unless I'm living in kind of love and community with other people. I can't cope with it. My only other option is to take drugs. That's my only other option, because the feelings behind my drug use and my alcoholism, they ain't gone nowhere.
Some drugs are great fun. All drugs can be fun used correctly. It's like booze as well. It does a lovely job, but then on occasions loosening people up. But when there are social conditions like we have currently, where there's a kind of economic deprivation and the kind of sort of, I don't know, where there's no sort of moral or spiritual centre to our life, I think it's really easy for all drugs to play too significant a role in a culture, and I think that's happened with booze in this country.
When I see bankers taking our money and doing exactly what they want with it, and when they get in trouble, we have to bail them out. Are you for real?
We could start by shooting all the bankers, hanging all the politicians.
A socialist society's got to be better than this.
Cheers!
In a society where people are feeling lost, hopeless, disenfranchised, then they are going to turn to alternative ways of dealing with that. And you can either choose drugs or you can choose alcohol.
So when stuff in our life gets too much, we just turn to alcohol because it's so easy to do that.
Even small amounts of alcohol may provide an illusion of relaxation. The person usually feels confident that everything is all right.
You know, our government has done its best to curtail people's access to any other form of drug. You know, that's certainly something that really needs to be understood right from the beginning, is that alcohol is a drug, as is marijuana, as is coffee. But it's a question of having a look at which are most constructive and which are most detrimental. But most of the information and the facts that I know about alcohol have come from mainly Professor Nutt. Well, as he said in the BBC, alcohol is more harmful than heroin or crack when the overall dangers to the individual and society are considered, according to a study in The Lancet.
So heroin is not dangerous?
Heroin, of course, heroin's dangerous. Heroin's very dangerous. I wouldn't recommend anyone to take it. The media tend to take a very sensationalist, very hysterical view about drugs.
You've compared the dangers of ecstasy to horse riding.
Well, obviously you haven't read the paper, have you?
Notorious drugs gang. Ecstasy and speed.
Illegal drugs.
Drugs.
Shoot the drug! So a few years ago, I started to get interested in the relative harms of drugs. Why are some drugs legal, some drugs illegal? And we pulled together an expert panel, and we used this new technique called multi-criteria decision analysis. And that looked at all the kinds of harms that a drug can do, from whether it can kill you when you take it, to whether it actually causes environmental problems. We discovered there were 16 separate harms, and we ranked all the drugs on those harms, and then we weighted the harms. And amazingly, out of that, to my surprise, alcohol came top. Alcohol was the most harmful drug in the UK. And when you look at the reasons for that, you see it's because the social harms of alcohol are so enormous. The harms due to health costs, due to road traffic accidents, due to violence in the streets, domestic violence, those are the ones that make alcohol, in the UK, the most harmful drug. It's one of the great public health scandals of the last century that we do not properly take account of what's happening in terms of alcohol and health damage.
The singer Amy Winehouse has been found dead at her flat. The 27-year-old discovered at the property in North London by emergency services at around 6 minutes to...
We knew that she was an alcoholic. She'd been in rehab. Her family knew she had a problem. They tried to help her. Why did the British public refuse to believe that a woman that we saw as a walking train wreck for years that she died of alcoholism. Oh no, she must have died of drugs.
I've been banging on about the fact that she hadn't taken drugs for 3 years. Everyone thought I was in denial. I wasn't in denial. She hadn't taken drugs.
She was a tiny, tiny little girl who drank like George Best on a stag night every night of the week. Of course she died of alcohol poisoning, but we don't want to see it. Because it's too frightening.
We should be telling people how dangerous alcohol is, and we should be using examples like her.
We live in a culture now where in many other walks of life we're expected to consume excessively. You know, we're told that consumption is a good thing and we're supposed to desire things, and especially when they're cheap and they're pleasurable.
There is so much evidence of the psychological effect of exposure to the advertising of branded goods, which give you a sense of, you know, what it is to be an adult, what it is to be a sophisticated individual. And I think it really impacts on young people's attitudes to themselves and their self-esteem.
I think one of the most insidious changes we've seen in the last 20 years is the way the drinks industry has tried to get to its consumers younger and younger.
So the invention of Alco Pops, the marketing of Alco Pops by the alcohol industry to attract this new type of drinker.
Designed specifically at getting young people, particularly girls, into alcohol in their teens.
It's in the streets next to schools, it's on our television, it's advertised around sport.
Gerrard! He's got it! Oh, Steven Gerrard!
We know that it does get through to young people. We recently did a study of 10 and 11-year-olds and asked them to recognise different types of brands and logos, and 95% of the 10 and 11-year-olds recognised Foster's and Stella Artois, and they didn't recognise cake and ice cream brands. Even we at Alcohol Concern were surprised by those results.
I just see a pattern where in countries where advertising is banned and the advertising industry behaves in a more responsible way in the marketing of goods, young people's lives are less commercialised, they're less exposed to those influences, and they tend to behave in a more responsible way, I mean, with regards to alcohol and consumerism and other products.
Château Noble. Un vin délicieux dans un emballage pratique.
In France, you're allowed to advertise alcohol products, but you can't have all of the imagery and the exotic nature surrounding the advert. You can advertise on the basis of what's in the product, where the product was made, the strength of the product, but you can't have a storyline and characters, and they also don't have alcohol sponsorship of sporting events. So the Heineken Cup in France is called the H Cup, and we think that something similar should happen in Britain.
Interesting bounce here to one side. Birmingham City have triumphed against
that champagne down there from Jensen Button right now.
Your point is to stop drugs and alcoholism by just people never starting?
Well, you two believe in this fantasy of addiction in which people lose...
Fantasy of addiction.
A complete fantasy in which people lose all power over themselves and become victims of this terrible, frightening disease.
I'm a person that if I have a drink, I can't stop. And so it would be following your ideology that I'm choosing to do that. I'm choosing...
That's exactly not my ideology, it is my belief. Yes, you do choose.
It's an obsession of your mind and an allergy of your body. So this is what happens to me. I start thinking about alcohol, I can't stop. I can't stop thinking about it.
And what's the objective physical proof of this inability to stop?
I think it's always very difficult for people who aren't alcoholic or don't have a problem with alcohol to see what it's like to be an alcoholic. It just looks stupid. It looks ridiculous. It's like, just stop it.
It won't happen to everybody. It happens to a minority of people. And that, I think, is why it's difficult for people it doesn't happen to, maybe to get their head around it.
I have an obsession of the mind that compels me to drink. And when I do drink, I have a physical allergic reaction, which manifests itself in the phenomenon of craving. I was a cheat, I was a liar, I was a thief. I was full of resentments and I was full of fear.
If you are the person who is dependent, who has to wake up every morning and your first kind of thought is, I feel ill, I feel shaky, and I know that what will work is if I have some alcohol, I will immediately feel better. That's kind of in some ways quite a simple existence, but it's really frightening.
People who you might imagine are pillars of society are often, hiding all sorts of stories. And the only way we even get a hint of that is within the kind of confessional, if you like, either of the church or the therapy room.
Images like this have become synonymous with our country. But there is a whole other side to alcohol abuse that we don't see.
Fucking hell, man.
This is my Uncle John.
So, I'm probably an alcoholic. Probably. Yeah, I got a bit here, look. But that's it. And it's just a sip,
Where's that? Whiskey?
That's whiskey, yes. Do you want some? Okay, no problem. I used to drink wine and beer, all kinds of fucking rubbish. But I don't anymore. I just drink a little bit of whiskey. That's all. But I'm just a sipper. Yeah, I'm not a swigger, All right, I just sip. You can see, Jesus, I haven't touched it. All right.
Whether he sips it or not, he gets through 2 bottles of whiskey every day. This comes to about 80 units of alcohol, which is 26 times his recommended daily limit. He's been diagnosed with Wernicke's encephalopathy, also known as the disease of alcoholics.
It affects me in many ways. I haven't left the house in more than 6 months. All right. I can't. I can't even get to the corner shop these days. All right. So, I don't wear shoes anymore. There's no point. Maria has to do, my wife has to go out and do all the shopping and whatever. All right, and my son has to go to school by himself. That's okay, that's working. Everything's working.
She's not okay. It's on time, we no drink.
What, so sometimes he's better than he is,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes he's worse?
Mm-hmm. Now it's worse. Mm-hmm.
So how long have you been like this?
God. Quite a long time. Quite a long time. I would say about maybe a year. I just fucking lost all comprehension of everything. Maria would come in with some food which meant nothing. Didn't understand it. Look at it, had not a clue as to what I was supposed to do with this. I could still drink some whiskey. That was okay. But I couldn't understand food at all. I couldn't understand anything,
So you didn't eat for quite a long time?
Yes, a very long time.
Do you eat now?
I'm trying to, force feed myself. Okay, so I'm trying to learn how to eat again.
Here you are.
Here we are, yeah.
John, you going to come and eat with us?
No, I'm okay. I've got some whiskey. I couldn't fucking figure it out. I had no idea what the hell was going on. That's when I went into hospital. I went to the Liverpool hospital. God, it was horrible.
How long were you there for?
9 days. They found a little bit of brain damage. Not much. And then one of the nurses said, okay, yeah, everything you've taken all your life has caught up with you, which I personally don't believe. It was some kind of, God knows what, Christ, it was a, fucking hell, I can't remember what it was called.
What happened to your face?
Last night, I had a fall in the bathroom. Bad one. Absolutely fucking blood everywhere. I've broken my nose, which is okay, it's straight. So that'll heal by itself. So, not worried about that. I'm starting to get a bit drunk, so it helps.
And that helps, does it?
Yes. Yeah, it does. I spend most of my time in bed, in here. I'm living down here in bed so I can get to the bathroom, because I have to go about 20 times a day. Sometimes it's not possible to get to the bathroom. Right, that's pretty difficult. Yeah, I normally wear not jeans, but bathroom, what do you call them?
Pajamas?
Pajamas, yes. Yeah, that's what I normally wear, because it can fall through onto the floor, and then I can clean it up.
How does Patrick feel about your drinking?
Nothing. I don't know. I really don't know. Ow. This is really hurting.
Do you think you'll ever get better?
I don't know. I don't know. I have no idea. I have no idea. It doesn't look good. I really don't think it looks good.
My uncle hasn't always been like this. This was the first time I'd seen him in 3 years, and it was shocking to see how much he had changed. But for me, the most disturbing thing of all is the lack of treatment available for people like him.
Access to treatment is a huge issue. I mean, compared to drug treatment, alcohol is way down the list. And I think there's a real stigma still around accessing treatment for alcohol. It's something that's still perceived to be something to be ashamed of, something that people are afraid to admit to themselves and to others that they've got a problem.
About 1.6 million people in England are dependent on alcohol, yet only about 6% of people with an alcohol dependency problem are receiving treatment. That's not because the other 94% of people don't want to receive it. There is very little alcohol treatment available.
A lot of rehabs have closed. It's getting harder and harder, and those people who have been funded through treatment, you are getting luckier and luckier and luckier, because it's becoming something that's going to be very, very difficult to do in the future.
Do I look like an alcoholic? God, no. Do I look like I'm recovering from alcoholism? Probably not, actually, but what are we waiting for? Who the hell does? If I don't look like an alcoholic, who the hell does? Who are we waiting for? Who is it that's got the big sandwich board saying party time? Nobody looks like that. It's delusions like that we have to cut through.
We use terms like regular drinker when we mean alcoholic. We try always to minimise the possible understanding of the harms of alcohol, whereas we maximise our perceptions of harms of other drugs.
When I talk about the person I was when I was an alcoholic, it feels like I'm talking about a different person.
The life that I have now compared to the life that I had when I was drinking is incomparable. I don't look the same. I don't recognise myself when I see photos. Everything about my life has changed so much. I'm very happy now. Life is bigger. I see things now, I experience things. I have interests that aren't inside of a pub.
The personal transformation that I've undergone from being a hopeless, hapless, ridiculous drug addict with no future, no chance, no hope, to being an equal, valid member of this community is perhaps something that we can spread. Like, you all know what it was like when you were out there using. Even those of you that aren't junkies or drunks, you know people that are. And it seems desperate and it seems hopeless. It's horrible when you've got someone in your life that's suffering from this disease. It's horrible. There doesn't seem like a way out. Well, there is. You know, like through the practice of certain principles and the support of other addicts, there's a way out of it.
I ended up coming to Alcoholics Anonymous. I saw guys in their teens, I saw girls in their teens, in their 20s and their 30s, men and women from all walks of life. And these guys seemed to have a solution, and I was attracted to what I saw. I don't know why I'm an alcoholic, and it's irrelevant. The thing is relevant is I've found a solution.
I know that my story isn't unusual at all, because I set a website up and I talked about the really grim, horrible things that happened to me in an average day. And it went crazy. It went insane. I had emails from places I've never been, people I've never seen, saying that's how I feel. I'm shocked by the 21-year-old girls who email me, and boys, saying I've been an alcoholic for 5 years, my parents don't know I live at home. I'm shocked by the 22-year-old girl that says to me, this is my third go in rehab. I know I'm gonna die, but my parents aren't taking it seriously. I always think, oh, nothing's gonna shock me today. And then I hear another story. We're facilitating alcoholism. We're killing our children. We're killing our young people. And it's fine, because for one person to admit they have a problem, it's for everyone to admit that actually we all have a little bit of a problem. It's crazy that we're this much in denial when it's all around us.
The UK is not alone when it comes to problems with alcohol, but there is something about British culture which seems to foster illogical attitudes to drinking.
I think drinking in this country is seen as something that's very humorous.
And I mean, the first time I got drunk, I was 9 at a New Year's party. My relatives just thought it was funny.
It's become a cultural thing now, you know? You know, let's go out and get pissed.
There's a lot of pent-up aggression in people. I mean, it's a way of releasing it, isn't it?
Oh, she fell over. She's been drinking more than us.
The damage alcohol does to British society is immense.
It's the biggest public health disaster we face.
I think there are a particular group of factors about the UK that are not sort of instantly linked, but when you put them together, you can kind of understand why we are where we are.
A large part of it is actually to the British kind of stiff upper lip thing, not talking about our feelings.
We're not taught to open up and just be, you know, and cry and hug your dad and you show your emotions. So it's all kept in, and the only way to release it is through drink and drugs.
To me, I think a lot of it's got to do with that British attitude to life, to Britishness, and that strength and that steel.
This is England, the mighty, powerful Britannia. We're so proud, Britannia rules the waves.
If there's a pre-existing emotional or spiritual condition, like if you're a bit unhappy, alcohol can easily be seen as something to fill that gap.
I think that we're bored, I think we're depressed, I think we're scared, and I think as a nation we're medicating.
If you were to look at the British media, you would get the impression that, you know, drunkenness is completely unacceptable and we're kind of obsessed with how awful it is, and youth antisocial behaviour is a major focus. I would say that by focusing on it, we have glamorised it.
Current policy in Britain seems to be largely the strapline, drink responsibly. You know, everyone knows that alcohol takes away that sense of responsibility. It's embarrassing if anyone really believes that that is a policy.
And until we take on the drink industry and some of the vested interests, we will not start to see the problem resolved in the way that we need it.
Who in this room would like to see prohibition?
Were we to suddenly remove alcohol, there would be an awful lot of people who would be really, really struggling.
Prohibition in the United States created more death and murder in American history than any time other than the Civil War. So prohibition's certainly not the answer.
A lot of people are just stupid, you know. Put some antibiotics in the water, I don't know, get rid of it all.
It's not going to go away. We have a love affair with alcohol.
Alcohol is a lubricant, it's like the blood in our veins.
Drinking is absolutely embedded in culture.
It's kind of everywhere. It's part of our religion.
It sounds silly, but weather. I think weather has a lot to do with it.
There is often bad weather and people socialise inside.
I mean, you know, there was a time where the pub was probably the only place in the street that was warm, you know, that had a whole load of amenities that you would associate with socialisation.
Greater state intervention, higher taxes, more commercial restrictions do not address the societal attitudes that we must alter.
We're not teaching our children how to be responsible around alcohol because we're not responsible around alcohol. Who's going to teach us?
I think the way forward is one of education to help people understand the damage caused by alcohol.
I think there's a lot more that we could be doing about honestly educating people about drugs. It's no good just going into schools and saying drugs are bad, stop it.
People seem to need to take drugs and drink one way and another. We need to provide these people with the support that they need.
It's one of the easiest areas to cut funding, and no politician is going to stand up and propose for greater care of the addicts and alcoholics in this country.
We can't be judgmental, we can't be pejorative, we shouldn't be punitive. Until we have a compassionate, empathetic approach, we won't solve the problem.
That's enough. It is enough now for us to say, stop.
If anybody came up with a solution, you'd be a millionaire.
How many more people need to end up like my uncle? How many more people need to die? Britain has an alcohol problem, but what's it going to take for us to admit it? To put down that bottle, to wake up without a hangover.
Escape my mind from a broken bow, fall into finite space, with a roof torn down. This house is an empty place. Thought I saw Jesus come down, just like a soldier. I used used to cry like a clown, and now I'm older. Here come the lonely night, can't escape my mind. Here come the lonely night, can't escape.